Genshin Impact is a wildly popular game with hundreds of millions of players worldwide. It needs absolutely no introduction, as almost anyone who's ever touched the game has either heard of or even played it. Me personally, I've been playing the game since it launched way back in September of 2020. Although not as consistently as some other people, I've put a good probably around 1,000 hours into it, as well as a not so unsubstantial amount of money. Despite that, however, I struggle to enjoy the game these days, and it got me wondering why. Why is it that now, when I try to spend more than a week playing the game consistently, I can't manage to do so, whereas before, I could play for months at a time? And so I sat for a while, trying to rack my head around the reasoning why. And I think I've boiled it down to just a few things that keep me at arm's length from enjoying the game like I used to. With that said, here is a comprehensive list of my problems with, and things that I'd consider in general, problems with Genshin Impact. Now here's the thing, Genshin Impact has a weird dichotomy where there's so much content currently available to play through that new players are often put off from it, whilst also lacking enough content in the endgame to keep the current players actively coming back to play daily like it wants them to. We're currently 3 whole regions into the game, with each one of them being large enough on their own to be a considerably large game if they were their own single player RPG, meaning there's a fucking ton of content to catch up on if you aren't currently already caught up. It's a problem that keeps new people from playing the game. Although, Genshin isn't exactly starving for players right now. But on the flip side of that, once you've done that insane backlog of content and you're caught up, what is there to do? You log on to do your daily commissions, spend all your resin, maybe explore a bit if you still have a little bit of exploring to do, but what else? There's not much, which is why Hoyoverse's answer to that is new events every few weeks and event-exclusive stories. They implement short-timed content for players to do as an incentive to keep them coming back and to keep playing the game. This, however, brings me to my next issue with Genshin. As stated before, events are one way that Hoyo likes to keep its active players, active. These events can range from all manner of things, a fishing minigame, a hide-and-seek minigame, maybe a combat arena, the list goes on. But a lot of the time, these events will have a story attached to them as well, giving players who may not be interested in the content of the event itself a reason to do it. Now, I'm all for having a story during an event. I think it's a great idea. However, what I'm not all for is having key character development and important details regarding some characters locked behind these stories and then having them be limited timed events. For example, Albedo, a 5-star character and arguably one of the most recognizable from Mondstadt, has been marketed and showcased extremely heavily for a few events now, in which major events and story significant moments pertaining to himself have taken place. But should you miss out on said events, then you are out of luck. And of course, you can still learn what happens during an event story by reading a wiki, but someone who wants to play a game for its story isn't going to want to read a fucking wiki just to learn what happened during an event that they could have played if it was a permanent installment. Now, it's probably even worse for new players who are starting the game now who don't know that those stories aren't actually playable in the game anymore, considering how Hoyoverse markets most of them very, very heavily during their version trailers. The best thing that Hoyoverse can do is either make it so that stories that are tied to the events are somehow, in some way, still able to be experienced after the event is over, or just don't have stories for their more important side characters be tied solely to events. Of course, they won't do that because it does keep a lot of players on their toes and playing the game, not always out of love of the game, but out of fear of missing out. Speaking of things that Hoyoverse won't do, now, a lot of people might forget this fact. I know that I do quite often, but Genshin Impact has multiplayer. You could go your entire time in Genshin Impact and never touch the multiplayer once and you'd be just fine. And I think that's a really big shame. And I am well aware of the fact that Hoyoverse would probably never implement any changes to the multiplayer as it is, because it's fine right now. I just think that it's a shame they aren't doing more with their multiplayer functionality. Picture this, right? Okay. Imagine if Hoyoverse took a page from MMOs and added something akin to a 4-person dungeon. A form of challenging content in which you would need 4 players to enter, and you would go through a gauntlet of fighting several bosses, doing some challenges and puzzles, with a heal after each one, adding a layer of challenge and precision to it, making it so that everyone needs to work together to memorize mechanics and properly pull it off. And at the end of it, you get a reward, something like 600 Primo Gems and an artifact set. I mean, color me ambitious, but that sounds like it'd be hella enjoyable. Of course, they would never implement something like that, which is a fucking shame, because I think it would be awesome to have multiplayer-centric content similar to that, because as it is, it's kinda going to waste right now. Genshin Impact has had this problem even since its launch, and it's something I've never enjoyed doing because it feels like a chore. Genshin Impact dailies are so ungodly boring after like a month of playing the game that I lose all will to do them. I feel like the best comparison I can make for what it feels like to do Genshin Impact dailies is by comparing it to another game that I actually quite enjoy some and plan to be playing a lot more now that the class I actually want to be playing, the Artist, is coming out in April. Lost Ark is very, very similar to Genshin Impact in a lot of ways. Basically in both games you make your way through the main story. Your characters have their own level and your account has its own level. You get to a certain point in which you are expected to log on every day and run some dailies to make sure that you spend all of your resources. They keep you coming back to this every day by making it so that the progression is tied to spending those daily resources, in which you will get a random chance at an upgrade. In Lost Ark, you log on daily, you do your Chaos Dungeon, maybe a Guardian Raid or two. You know, maybe you got a ticket for the cube or a boss rush during your Chaos Dungeon, so you go and you run that too. And before you know it, you spent 3 hours just doing dailies for the chance to upgrade whatever gear you're currently wearing. Do I hate it? Yes, I hate random chance RNG and I hate spending so much time just farming for a few upgrade materials. But at least the gameplay is fun, which makes it redeemable enough for me to actually enjoy the overall experience of playing it. Genshin Impact is the exact same way. You log on, you spend your resin farming up artifacts for maybe a chance at getting a roll on one of them as an upgrade, and you do your commissions to slowly save up enough Primo Gems to maybe win your 50-50 on a new character that you want. The stark difference, however, is that Genshin Impact's combat starts to turn stale and lose its charm once you are at a certain level of strength. Once you have artifacts that are strong enough, fighting enemies in domains and doing your dailies start to become a little too easy. They no longer feel like fun, challenging content, but rather something that you just log on to get over with. In Lost Ark, the enemies and things that you kill are, they're easy and weak, yes, but there's also something to work towards by doing so. Harder content that doesn't become just a trivial matter once you get strong enough. Those being, of course, the raids. I mean, hell, even the Guardian raids I mentioned before that you might be doing daily are at least a challenge for you. You can't just walk in and press one button and kill the big strong monster within 10 seconds of the fight actually starting. What I'm trying to say with all this is that Genshin Impact's core loop, once you finish all the story, is nothing more than a chore to me nowadays. And that leads me to my final problem. Now this is hardly a Genshin Impact exclusive problem, as almost every game that delivers content on a patch-by-patch basis will suffer some extremely long dry spouts of new playable content. The issue, as stated, isn't exclusive to Genshin, and is more of an issue that patch-based games as a whole suffer from. A lot of games, including many that I really enjoy playing, started to fall out of favor in my eyes due to long dry spells in which they can go months without new content to do. Games such as Final Fantasy XIV, whose last major content patch was August 23rd of 2022, nearly 4.5 months ago. Genshin Impact likes to really front-load major version patches with content to do, and then has subsequent patches add maybe 6 to 8 hours of new story to play through. You know, maybe throw in a new event, and every 2 or 3 patches will add a new smaller area to explore. But they don't have and don't add any substantial, challenging, rewarding, or meaningful content that will keep players like me coming back. Other than, of course, the Spiral Abyss, which takes up like maybe an hour of total playtime every 2 weeks. At the very least, Final Fantasy XIV has raids that I can participate in, which I mean sure, after a while they get boring and not really worth the time, but they are a challenge that will almost certainly keep me and my friends coming back and entertained for a good month or 2 after a patch drops. Whereas in Genshin, I'll play for like maybe a couple of days at most, a week if it's a really heavy patch, but that's about it. Genshin just needs something more. Something to keep its returning players entertained. And hey, if none of these things listed above are a problem to you, and you don't find anything listed in this video as a flaw of the game, that's totally fine by me. I mean, these are just my reasons as to why the game is falling out of favor. Will I still play Genshin? I mean, yeah, every 2 or 3 patches I'll log on, play for a week, and get caught up on the stuff I still have to do. But unless they give me a real fun and enjoyable and, meaningful form of endgame content that isn't just farming the same artifacts daily, then I probably won't be playing it consistently like some people do. Anyways, that's the video. Like and subscribe or something, and I don't know. Stay beautiful. Love every one of y'alls. Mwah.